All right. Welcome to NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. We are talking this session about the Arizona Cardinals, and I am so excited to have a longtime journalist, Jared Page, join us, and obviously a lifelong Cardinals fan. How's it going?
Great. Hey, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. Uh, as you mentioned, I'm a lifelong Cardinals fan, and there's been a lot of exciting things to talk about with the Cardinals right now.
Absolutely. And obviously, we can kind of get right into that. With just the steps that Kyler Murray has taken, he really has kind of vaulted himself into that MVP category. He is right behind in yardage, right behind Tom Brady already this year.
He is, and with a lot of various betting agencies and odds makers, he is the odds-on favorite now. And you're seeing, a lot of former quarterbacks, former athletes, and also analysts really throwing his name in the ring for that. We had, especially after the showdown on Sunday with the Los Angeles Rams, two of the best quarterbacks through the first 3 weeks of the season, Kyler Murray and Matthew Stafford, going head to head, and Kyler clearly won that battle, and the Cardinals walked away with their first win against the Rams in that was in 9 tries. They had an 8-0 losing streak against them, and so Kyler Murray, left the stadium that night to chants of MVP from the fans that had traveled from Arizona to cheer him on. So the calls are coming for the MVP, that's for sure, for Kyler Murray.
And what is it about him this year? I saw some of the highlights, and he's really making some really tight, throws. And what is it about kind of his development, this year that's kind of really helped him take that next step already?
And it really has been noticeable this season, the step he has taken. When Kyler came in, he was the Heisman Trophy winner. He was the number one overall pick. In his first season, he won the Rookie of the Year, made some positive steps. The next season, made his first Pro Bowl, took some positive steps there. This season, though, it really feels to me like a monumental step, and a lot of it is, and it started in training camp. A lot of it is just in Kyler Murray's ownership of this team. He either has matured, his teammates have embraced him. He feels more comfortable being the leader, being the vocal leader. He has been a different guy since the start of training camp. A lot more vocal. He has, while it was Kyler Murray's team sort of in the past because he was the quarterback. There's no doubt now that this is Kyler Murray's team. And I think that's the big difference. He's playing with an incredible confidence, and it really is a remarkable jump that he's made from last year. And and maybe we didn't get to see the progress that maybe he would have made last year had he not gotten banged up a little bit. He battled that shoulder injury, so he wasn't quite right. But now we're getting a quite right somebody who's healthy, plus super confident in being a leader on this team. This is his third year with Kliff Kingsbury's offense. He seems more comfortable making the reads. He's seen more from defenses, and another big factor that has helped Kyler along this year is the addition of center Rodney Hudson. They've got a guy who is one of the best in the game at being able to diagnose what defenses are doing. And he and Kyler have been working together. They're communicating on the field. And so I really feel he has also helped with his development. But the number one main thing is Kyler's just the fact that he has taken ownership of the team. He's made it his team.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. He hasn't really he doesn't really come off in the national media as a very outspoken guy. He just seems kind of really quiet, and and maybe that works to his advantage within that kind of team. Just it does his play pretty much speak louder than his words.
It does, and he coming out of college, he was kind of awkward in interviews. I mean, there's a Dan Patrick Show interview. If you listen to that before the Heisman Trophy, or before the NFL draft, he wasn't quite. I mean, I think he wasn't quite comfortable in the spotlight, and I think he might not be super comfortable in it with I'm talking about the media spotlight. When he's on the football field, he's completely comfortable, but in like talking about the game, doing the media stuff, I don't think he was too comfortable with that at first, but again, with that confidence that he is displaying this season, with that ownership of the team, he's kind of taken that on too, and he you can see a difference in the way he deals with the media this year.
Mhm.
Was
And
my point in the long-winded way of saying that.
oh, and absolutely, and I think it's so interesting to see some of these younger quarterbacks really kind of take that step. Obviously Josh Allen has
Hmm.
kind of took that step last year, and obviously, from plays so far, Murray's he's really starting to kind of vault into that category where you're going to have to talk about him, for years to come because and obviously you live in Arizona, right?
Well, I'm from Arizona, and
Oh, you are
I'm
okay.
in Salt Lake City right now,
Yes.
but I'm an Arizona native, and I'm there quite a bit.
So, I'm actually in Wisconsin here, and we don't really, or at least in the preseason, hadn't really heard a lot about the Cardinals. I heard a little bit actually that they might even be overhyped, that they would do well. So this is kind of, I'm sure refreshing for Arizona fans for them to really, just kind of, I don't want to say come out of nowhere, but they really expected to be this good.
Oh no, I think the general consensus was that they would finish last in a very difficult NFC West, and if they had a good season, it that they were talented, but the fact they played in the NFC West, that they would, you know, did not measure up with the other great teams, the Rams, the 49ers, and the Seahawks, and they are both all very good teams. But what we've seen through the first 4 weeks is that. Arizona does every bit deserves to be in that conversation. And you're right; it has re-energized this fan base. They've been waiting for a winner for a while. The last time the Cardinals were in the playoffs was 2015, and so that's a 6 year drought here that fans are. It looks like going to finally get to see end again.
Has Kliff Kingsbury kind of really, been a factor there as well, kind of with his play calling and everything?
Yeah, Cliff is an interesting guy too, and he looks so, uh, Don Draper perfect. This snazzy guy, but he's really surprisingly down to earth at times with his comments, and he's very like pop culture savvy. He's talking about Ted
He
Lasso
just
and other
called himself
TV
Ted
shows that
Lasso.
he
Yep.
that he watches. He's and
Yeah.
but I think Cliff too, now in his third season, both this has been kind of a growing process for both Cliff and Kyler together. I think he too has also kind of come into his own, where he brought what was kind of called and labeled an air raid style offense to the NFL, and has had to adapt that as he goes. And the thing about Cliff though, and this is the thing that I didn't know until really probably this season, because I hadn't really seen that, is that he really doesn't have his, as far as with being a play caller, he doesn't really have a huge ego. He really is a guy who is a great offensive mind. His mind is a sponge, and he wants to learn it. So he's not. He doesn't think he knows it all. And so I think the fact that he's like that he doesn't think he knows it all. He's here. He's can learn. He's like, oh, this is what's going to work here in the NFL. I can adapt that and make that work. I think that's been successful. And you know what? He's had a great year. He's made a couple questionable calls in the season. We got the kick in Jacksonville at the end of the half, which you worry about that being returned, which is exactly what happened. And so, and there have been some other questionable calls, but I'll tell you what, I thought he coached his best game on Sunday against his friend and mentor Sean McVay, and pretty much, and actually I would say outcoached McVay in that game.
Which not many coaches do. Obviously, I've heard him, Sean McVay in some of his press conferences, just how knowledgeable he is, and I think that there are a lot of teams that are trying to replicate that, and obviously, it was a surprise. You know, Kingsbury the hire. I don't know if it was kind of within the fan base. He had a losing record in college, and or a subpar record, and here he gets an NFL job, and obviously he's kind of that hot new NFL offensive mind, and obviously he's really helped Kyler Murray kind of take that next step. Then,
Mhm. Yeah, and you're right. His connection to Sean McVay, his being seen as the next possible Sean McVay is a big reason he's in Arizona as the coach. They gave a shot to a guy who showed some skill with some offensive mind and was kind of in that coaching fraternity friendship with those guys, and thought they could bring that to Arizona. And Kingsbury also was very familiar with Kyler Murray, uh, coaching in Texas, playing and coaching at Texas Tech, and
Mhm.
where Kyler grew up in Texas, and then went to Texas A&M. He spent a lot of time watching him, being aware of his play. And I remember, but before he even got the job, he was still a coach at Texas Tech and wasn't sure, didn't know he was going to be fired. Was talking about, if I had the number one pick, that's who I'd put it on. This is the guy, and little do you know that's before that, 3 or 4 months later, he's lost his job, but then he's becomes the Cardinals guy and gets to draft that guy. And I think it's a relationship that I think has grown over those 3 years. I think they are a lot more in sync than they used to be. I think again, Kliff's ego with if Kyler doesn't like a play, he's like, you know what, if the quarterback doesn't like it, it's not going to work. So I'm going to go with some stuff he likes. And
Right.
so I think they have. I think in their third year, they've come to a good understanding of each other more, and it shows. I mean, Kyler is really seeing the field well. I mean, if you watch the game Sunday against the Rams, I mean, you talk about the things he does with his feet, but when he's been staying in the pocket, the guy has made some um, fantastic throws, fantastic reads. He has an amazing arm, the baseball background, can,
Mhm.
when he's on the move can run, but even in the pocket, he can make plays. And I think that's where he hasn't gotten a lot of credit, but he is picking apart teams in the pocket. And when those things break down, he is making them miss with the run. And that's why he's the MVP right now.
Well, yeah, and you talked about kind of being in sync, and obviously, the quarterback has to be in sync with the wide receivers, and obviously, it was just a crazy trade when the Cardinals, when they got DeAndre Hopkins. Obviously, he's been solid.
Yeah.
You're seeing a resurgence of AJ Green. So talk a little bit about kind of what they have meant to Murray as well.
Yeah. And so with Hudson securing the offensive line, the Cardinals also added some weapons as well that you mentioned there. Uh, AJ Green was a offseason addition of a guy who has been a stud in this league, and seven, I think it is, 1,000-yard receiving yards and 1,000-yard receiving seasons, and had some injuries the last few years in Cincinnati, but the Cardinals still believed in him, and so far it's paid off. And then they drafted Rondale Moore out of Purdue, who if he hadn't gotten injured and hurt in college, probably wouldn't have been available to the Cardinals where they got him in the second round. And so he's a guy who has incredible speed. He's returning kicks. He just gives them another weapon. You mentioned Hopkins. Hopkins is the go-to guy. You've seen him draw double coverages all season, which has made it great for guys like AJ Green and Rondale Moore. And the guy I didn't mention, Christian Kirk, who maybe he's having a fantastic season, his best yet as a Cardinal, and a former Scottsdale guy, Saguaro High School, local guy too,
Nice.
playing for his home team, and so he's has fantastic. So really, those receiving core, that 1 through 4, is really dangerous. And um, if you look at the stats or watch Cardinals games this season, you'll see that even though Hopkins is getting the number one attention, Kyler spreads it around. He's making great reads in the pocket. He's going to the guys who's open, and if teams shadow Hopkins and roll coverages over to him, which is what they have been doing, the other guys are stepping up and having great days.
Yeah, I know. Fantasy wise, I have AJ Green in a few
Oh yeah.
places, and he's definitely he's helped me out. And some of the others you talked about, like I wondered if Rondale Moore would kind of take the Christian Kirk role, or they're really still kind of coexisting, and obviously Kirk still having a solid season.
Yeah, they are coexisting, and you're right. They both kind of have that slot speedy receiver. Rondale, you'll see them use him a lot more too. They'll line him up in the backfield sometimes, and he gets the ball on end arounds, and so they're using him in a lot of different places. And he's also returning kicks. They're trying to get him on the field, but Christian Kirk has just been. Uh, really great in the slot, and it has had, and actually when they've asked him, when Hopkins has been hurt, when they've asked him to line up on out wide too, he's done a great job there. He can really do it there, but the slot is a great position for him because he runs great routes. He has a great way of getting separation, and he and Kyler have a really great chemistry. I mean, you see some of the times, some of those plays, particularly one. I think it was in the Minnesota game, I believe it was, where he pretty much just dropped it right over Kirk's head, and and it was a play they practiced done in practice. It was a blitz where Kyler's like rolling back and just kind of flings it, but it looks like it's backyard football, but they've practiced it so many times. These two are in such a great chemistry with each other, and they're on the same page that it's been fun to watch this offense kind of achieve the potential that we saw at times last year.
Right. And you talk about, the offense. It's something, obviously a part of the offense that it's been really hard to figure out from a fantasy football perspective
Mm-hmm.
for a while. And I'm sure even, from regular football,
Yeah.
the backfield, obviously Chase Edmonds, you just don't know what you have in him. And I like in your article, your latest article, he talked about James Conner and, obviously he's been a great addition this year.
He is, and the Cardinals running backs really deserve a lot of credit in the Jacksonville game, and also and in the tennis in 3 of the 4 games, aside from the game in the Minnesota when they were come down to the wire, when the Cardinals had leads and they needed to hold on to them in the fourth quarter, they've been able to feed Edmonds and Connor. And while their numbers haven't been like super spectacular, they've run the clock down. They've helped them secure the wins, and so you saw that Sunday in Los Angeles against the Rams with the Cardinals offense really going to town early, and then with the passing game, well, actually with a pretty balanced attack, but then late in the game, their final drive, with the main drive that had to start at the 1 yard line, we took it all the way down for a chip shot field goal from Matt Prater from 23 yards, but they took eight and a half minutes off the clock and just sealed the victory for the Cardinals. And they did it, ran on every play with the Rams defense, knowing that they're trying to run the ball and run the clock out. They were able to do it efficiently and effectively. And so those two guys, James Conner, and obviously he was the longtime Pittsburgh Steelers back, or the former Pittsburgh Steelers back that signed in the offseason. He gives them, as you'll see, he's had 2 red zone touchdowns in each of the last 2 games. He's become the goal line back. He's a short yardage back. Chase Edmonds has such great speed and such great hands that he's awesome in the passing game. And so between the two of them, they are a great 1-2 punch, which has been great for the Cardinals, but I can see why it's not great for fantasy, because you got 2 guys splitting it, but it's working on the actual football field.
Well, in your article, I like how you also talked about, you brought up I don't know if obviously Kliff Kingsbury, kind of sat down and when they rush for at least 25 rush attempts, they're 6-0. Is that?
Yeah. So, well, it's with this season there. So the numbers, actually I had them right here. Yeah. So I believe the numbers are 16. So since he's been here, and this is something that Kliff has mentioned a couple times. And so after he mentioned it on Sunday, I went back and I just looked up all the box scores and I kind of just did my own little calculations to find out, okay, what's his record when they do run, 25 times. And it turns out it was, 16-6 is the record when they have 25 carries in a game in his offenses. And then the opposite side of that was, I think it was like 0-8-1 or 0 and yeah. And so it's not just, so it's really clear that even though he has this air raid style, heavy shotgun, heavy pass kind of label about him, Kingsbury knows the way to win games is to be balanced, and his offenses have done that well. And he's had six. Yeah, you mentioned 6 times. This is the 6th time the Cardinals have rushed for over 200 yards in a game under Kingsbury, and they're 6-0 in those games. So that's the stat you were
Yeah.
mentioning. But
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
so with getting 200 yards, I mean that's fantastic. You normally are going to win those football games, but yeah, for the Cardinals, it is important for them to run the game, run the ball in order to make this exciting, uh, high flying offense really go.
And does this kind of, does this win over the Rams kind of like change the narrative? I mean, like it's always kind of been, you got the NFC, you've got, well, obviously Tampa Bay, and because Aaron Rodgers is there, you have the Packers, although their defense has been suspect, you know. But yeah, I mean, does this kind of, I mean, the Cardinals are definitely in that NFC championship kind of, I mean, conversation, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, again, they've got the best record right now. It is a little bit, as a longtime Cardinals fan, I'm a little apprehensive because I've seen us have them have strong starts before and then fizzle. But there really is something different about this team right now. I mean, they're the way they're playing. Is actually giving you fans confidence that, hey, these guys are for real. And I think that's also the message that's kind of permeating into the national media. We're hearing a lot of it today. I mean, I heard Steve Young in the pregame of the Monday night game talking about how great Kyler Murray, and how Kingsbury's offense is the perfect fit for a mobile quarterback, and that this is and praising what the Cardinals are doing. And Rich Gannon was on his show talking about it as well, and I think the Cardinals are certainly in that conversation, and just staying in that conversation means they'll need to keep winning and being part of it, because they it doesn't change the fact that they're still in that very difficult NFC West. They're going to play they got another huge game coming up against the 49ers this Sunday in Arizona, and that's a team that the Cardinals have struggled against in the Kingsbury era. And so they we saw the Cardinals, I think, a little bit last year, and Kyler Murray talked about it when at the 5-2 start, and they kind of got feeling good about themselves. I think maybe there's a learning curve there, that they realize that feeling good about yourselves isn't going to get it done. You have to keep working. And so hopefully there's part of that learning curve too. This is a more mature team, and they can sustain it. And that's what we're all waiting to see.
Well, and a big part of that obviously is the defense as well, because it'll be interesting. Obviously, kind of in that game, I believe. Well, we're trying to find out, if Trey Lance will be the guy, with injury, and obviously he had a big game. But this defense, it really is, a star-studded defense when you go with Jones, Baker, Watt, Simmons, Byron Murphy. What is JJ Watt meant to that defense as
JJ
well?
Watt, yeah, JJ Watt has made a huge impact on this defense, and some people may balk at that or question it when you look at his numbers so far in the field. He hasn't had a sack, but he has been disruptive, and he has he's been in on a lot of plays, I really feel like a breakout game he's certainly due for a breakout game. But just the presence of JJ Watt being the 3-time defensive player of the year, his work ethic, his leadership in the locker room, and has really made an impact on this defense. They're a very confident bunch, and you got JJ Watt on one side, you got Chandler Jones on the other, you got Buda Baker roaming the field. Isaiah Simmons is an exciting young talent, and then Byron Murphy, another former teammate of Kirk at Saguaro High School back there in Scottsdale, Arizona. He also, he's had his third interception of the season, which I think ties him for second in the league right now.
Yeah.
That guy has made a tremendous step from last year, and it's a good thing because they were really counting on that. I mean, he's the guy in that secondary now. Patrick Peterson is gone in Minnesota now, and the Malcolm Butler signing didn't work out, and due to personal reasons that are still kind of unknown. And that was one of the major questions coming into this season was, can those corners hold up? Yes, you're going to get pressure on the quarterback, but are your guys going to be giving up, yards through the air? And so far, Byron Murphy has answered that question, and the rookie Marco Wilson has really played, I think, a better than expected, or better than that some had thought. But he has. I mean, Marco Wilson's still learning, and we saw Sam Bradford. Matthew Stafford. Sam Bradford. Wow, that's a blast from the past. Wrong Rams quarterback.
Hey, he's Oklahoma quarterback, right?
That's true. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Matthew Stafford, we saw him pick on Marco Wilson a little bit early with that, and so there's still a learning curve for him. But the corners really have held up very well, and in large part because Byron Murphy is having a fantastic year.
And they're going to need that in that division, obviously. Like you said, that's between the three. Well, I mean, all the teams. I mean, Arizona didn't necessarily get as much, credit, and obviously they're getting that now. That's good to see, and you know, I actually live near Pewaukee, Wisconsin, so JJ Watt's hometown,
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, so it's been kind of cool. His family still lives in the area. He still kind of comes back every once in a while, and
Nice.
obviously it was tough to see him leave Houston, but he was really about team, and
Mhm.
obviously you brought up he's not maybe getting the stats that he has in the past. But yeah, he does mean quite a bit leadership wise, and we saw that when he was here at Wisconsin, and obviously from afar, when he was in Houston as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, that defense, when you really look at it, I hadn't really looked at it until kind of preparing for the show here, and yeah, they really. That could really make a difference between them just getting to the playoffs and making really a deep run.
Yeah, it definitely can. And having the leaders they have in the room, JJ Watt was a huge signing, and no matter what his numbers say, that's a signing that Steve Keim and the Cardinals and I think Kliff Kingsbury would all support. And Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator, would make that 100 times again every time, because of
Mhm.
what he's brought to that locker room. Rodney Hudson has kind of done the same thing as the offseason addition on the offensive line. AJ Green also brings some more veteran leadership um, to the receivers room there, and so really, and that's in addition to the leaders they already had on the team. Buda Baker's kind of a young and kind of rising leader on the team, and obviously, Chandler Jones is also a huge presence there too. So those guys, but really, and to kind of circle back to the leadership role that Kyler Murray has taken on this year. The Cardinals, and this may be a little bit unpopular opinion, but the Cardinals had a really uh, powerful presence in the locker room for a lot of years with Larry Fitzgerald, and
Mhm.
Larry decided to step away from football. Hasn't officially retired at this point. Decided to step away, and honestly, I really, as much Larry Fitzgerald, just to preface this, as a Cardinals fan, he's my favorite all-time Cardinal. I love Larry Fitzgerald. I want to see him. I hope he comes back and plays with us at the Cardinals again. I really hope he does.
Mhm.
Uh, but I really feel like, whether it was intentional or just kind of an unintended consequence of something sad and negative, is that Larry Fitzgerald leaving that offensive locker room really opened the door for Kyler Murray to be the guy to step up. I mean, and to be, more vocal. When you've got a guy like Larry Fitzgerald, as great as he is, as respected as he is, he casts a huge shadow. And so it I don't think it's coincidental that, Larry has kind of stepped away, and we've seen Kyler fill that void. Kyler has kind of stepped into his own. And the good thing about that, the way it all went down, is that I do believe that if Larry decides to come back, as he has kind of hinted that maybe he would, and if the Cardinals keep winning and have a chance to make the playoffs, Larry can still help this team. And Steve Keim has said that there's a spot available for him. So if Larry wants to come back, he's going to be back. Uh, I can see the fact that because Larry has taken that step away, Kyler has taken this team and it's become his, that Larry can come and be one of Kyler's guys and but defer to Kyler. It kind of, there was no ceremonial passing of the torch. It kind of took Larry kind of walking away to create this chance for Kyler to step in there. But I really feel that had a real is a big reason why Kyler is what we're seeing from Kyler is being, this is his team, this is his offense. Because it's hard to say that, no, this is my team when you're playing with Larry Fitzgerald, because it's been his team for so long.
Well, yeah, in the NFL, it's a prove it league, right? And obviously, Larry Fitzgerald, back to the Super Bowl and so many,
And as a Packers fan, you know all about Larry Fitzgerald making big plays in the playoffs.
Although I do have to correct you, I'm not a Packers fan.
Oh, you're not? Oh, okay.
I am not, but no, that's all right.
I made that assumption because you're in Wisconsin, I guess.
I'm a Bears fan living in enemy territory.
Okay.
So, but
Gotcha.
My kids are Packer fans, unfortunately. So.
One of mine is too. I don't know how that happened. He had a second grade teacher who was a Packers fan. I tried to raise them all to be Cardinals fans, but hey.
And that's interesting. The Cardinals, well, obviously they were in St. Louis for a few years, and they almost left Arizona, didn't they?
There was talk that they, if they hadn't got that stadium referendum passed and been able to build what is now State Farm Stadium, there was a possibility that they could have lost that team. I don't know how close it ever came to, if it was more than a threat, but it was certainly a possibility, is because they needed at the time they said they needed the taxpayer subsidy in order to build the stadium. And it was an investment in the area and in the future of Arizona. And I think most people, we've had Super Bowls there. The Cardinals have had some great games there. I think it's been a really good investment for the city. I certainly would have voted for the referendum there too. But yeah, so there was a time where, they're playing in Sun Devil Stadium, and, you've got a not a very good team. You're a team that has moved from St. Louis, so you don't have a big fan base there. The Dallas Cowboys were good in the 90s, and they were on TV all the time. And Arizona, I mean, I did a story earlier this season. They talked about in one of the Cardinals folktales they had about the time they finally beat the Cowboys in the 90s and tore the goalposts down and paraded them down the Mill Avenue in Tempe. But for a lot of years, it was a Cowboys town. You go to Cardinals games, and you still see it to some respect, where there's still, it's a transplant state. There are still a lot of fans from other teams there, but it was decidedly against the Cardinals early on when they're playing at Sun Devil Stadium. Now that they actually have an NFL stadium, they've had some good seasons. The Red Sea shows up, and you do get a lot of good traveling fans with those. The Packers travel well. A lot of those teams are going to travel well. And Arizona is a fun place to visit during football season because the weather is great. So people are trying to go. But they have found a home in Arizona, and they've got a fan base that really supports them, and it's a hungry fan base. That's that's, as we saw with the Phoenix Suns, and they were been bad for so long, and then if make the playoffs for the first time in a decade, and then go all the way to the NBA Finals, that the town really showed up. It really revived that fan base, and so having a playoff Suns team followed by possibly a playoff Cardinals team is just like, it's a fun time to be a sports fan in Arizona, and it's been a long time coming. They've had a lot of lean years for the professional, for at least those two franchises.
Yeah, and so obviously, the fan base is excited. What do you kind of predict for the final kind of win total for the team, and then maybe where do you think they're going to go in the playoffs?
Gosh, so I'll tell you. I'll be honest with you. At the start of the season, I thought if they could get 10, that would probably be a good season, just based on what I knew about the team. Now I'm setting that mark at maybe. The 2015 team, the Arizona Cardinals, went 13-3 with 17 games this year. I think 13 wins would be pretty solid, and with the schedule they have coming up, the way they've played, playing in that tough division. I think 13 is a is a reasonable goal based on how they've played. So I'm going to go with it would be 13-4 this year with the 17
Sounds
games. It
sounds
sounds weird,
similar.
doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's like
I
my
was looking
math
at
is wrong.
yeah, I was looking at it too, and I was thinking 13-4 because you get at Seattle, at Cleveland, maybe LA, and at Dallas. And those are still winnable games, with how they're playing.
Yeah,
So
and with as good as these teams are in the NFC West, if you split, so if they split with those teams and they go 1-1 against all those guys, that's 3 losses for them. And I think any team in the NFC West this year should feel good about that. If you get one against one of those teams, especially with Arizona showing that they are at the a high level and can compete for that crown, that there isn't a team. I mean, and I honestly I thought I was impressed with Seattle to beat San Francisco. I kind of thought Seattle was down, and I thought this might be the year where we see Seattle at the bottom of the standings, and then they come out and have a nice win in San Francisco. So I think all these teams are going to battle. I think 13-4 would win this division, and that's where the Cardinals want to be.
and you talk about winning the division. Is it important for this team to have a home playoff game?
It's tough. So the car, you would think so because you'd want your fans at home, and I think with the playoff schedule, I mean, if you can possibly get yourself to play less games, if there's a bye, I don't know how maybe there aren't buys with this. I'm not sure how the buys work with the new. I got to look at that again with the new playoff schedule with the different with the additional wild card teams as well. So, but the Cardinals have played. They're one of only a couple of teams, I believe, that 3 of their first 4 games this season have been on the road, and they've won them all. They've gone to Tennessee, they've gone to Jacksonville, and though Jacksonville is down, that's still a West Coast, East Coast trip. They did that to Tennessee, and then they went to LA. And so the Cardinals, and they get 3 of their next 4 at home. So we'll see how they do at home. But so far, the Cardinals, and maybe it's due to that veteran leadership that they've brought in with guys like J.J. Watt. They don't seem to mind playing on the road. They've found a lot of success there so far. I mean, I think we saw the best game we've seen from them this season on Sunday in LA, and that was a road game in a really hostile crowd.
Absolutely. It's so interesting this season already. I mean, you have one top dog, obviously, Tom Brady and the Bucs are there. And then you have, the Rams come in and they take care of your business. Oh, the Rams are there. And now the Cardinals have kind of vaulted over that. And, I got to say, I definitely would like to see the Cardinals do well. Definitely. I'm from Iowa, so I'm a huge Kurt Warner fan, and I
okay,
was
there you go.
yeah, and I was cheering for him in that Super Bowl, hoping that those toes were out.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was a great game as well, and
heartbreaker. But yeah, fantastic. That was a fantastic playoff run.
So, are you going to predict a Super Bowl here?
I'd love to see them get back, but I would love, the Super Bowl is going to be in SoFi Stadium, so I think it would be so sweet that the Cardinals could steal that opportunity from the Rams to play a home game there. So I would love to see it. I still think there are still. I think the corners have held up pretty well. The offensive line is the only concern because of the injuries they've had there. But as who was it that I heard today that was talking about this? Oh, it was Carson Palmer, former Cardinals quarterback, was on the Dan Patrick Show talking about Kyler Murray. And he said, with a guy like Kyler Murray, you don't need 5 Pro Bowl offensive linemen. So the offensive line really has done a decent job creating holes in the run, and Kyler has been pretty well protected even with some of the injuries they've had there, being down their right guard, their right tackle yesterday, and kind of having to shuffle that. And they've kind of had to adjust for the past 3 games here with just due to guys banged up on the offensive line. Rodney Hudson's getting a lot of credit for kind of holding those guys together because he kind of keeps them all on the same page because the man knows what he's doing. But that's the question mark. So yeah, barring But you know what? Barring health, yeah, there's no reason this team can't be in the Super Bowl on Super Bowl Sunday and playing again at SoFi Stadium. And you know, Kyler Murray right now, he looks driven. I mean, he looks hungry. He's a winner. I mean, he's gone. He's won the Heisman Trophy. He's been a winner wherever he's gone. You know, having these kind of losing seasons in Arizona hasn't sat very well with him, and he really seems poised to turn that around. So I really do, you know, yeah, this really could be a. I honestly would not have thought we'd be talking a Super Bowl. I thought let's make the playoffs. That's a good step this year. But
Right.
after what we've seen the first 4 weeks, it's like let's not just make the playoffs. Let's make some noise in the playoffs. I think this team is capable of that.
Well, and locally here, that would be a huge story, with JJ Watt in the Super Bowl.
Oh
And
yeah.
and you have that veteran leadership that does make a difference, especially in crunch time. I mean, you have that with Tom Brady. You saw that on the Sunday night game. He just kind of has that aura. Offensively as a quarterback. Obviously Kyler Murray's trying to get there, but defensively, JJ Watt has been there, and it makes a difference. Those players who have been there and done that when it comes to crunch time.
Hmm. Definitely, for sure. And you know, and Kliff Kingsbury has talked about that a lot with just the presence that JJ Watt brings, just being in the building, the confidence and just the level of professionalism, the his work ethic is contagious. And so, yeah, there's a guy who we'd love to see get to a Super Bowl. There's one of the greatest players to ever play this game.
And obviously this is a little bit early to think about, but what are some needs? Obviously, you said kind of offensive line. Going into next year, I mean that might be one thing that they need to address.
Yeah, and some of that'll be contingent upon who they invest in and bringing back. I really hope that the Chandler Jones contract situation is one that's out there. Christian Kirk's on the end of his deal too, and with Rondell Moore coming in, there's talk that will they keep them both? And so there'll be some of those things to settle out, but just initially from this point, I think adding depth to the offensive line is always a good thing. It is an area where they probably have the greatest need right now. Another position is again the cornerback spot. And while Byron Murphy has been great there, Marco Wilson's holding up pretty well. They could use some help there as well. And so I could see that being as a possible destination. And they go, but overall, I mean, they have assembled. This is the best the Cardinals roster has looked in the Kliff Kingsbury era. I mean, he has the best toys that he's ever had to play with since he's been there, and so I'm excited to see how far they can go with it. And hopefully, I hope that they can keep some of these guys around, keep Christian Kirk, and be able to. I know there's only so much money to go around, but Chandler Jones is such an important part of that defense. He's such a presence, and I really having him paired with Watt. I mean, I'd like to see that for more than just one season.
Absolutely. Yeah. This has been, fantastic. Obviously, from kind of an outsider looking in, it's, you see Kyler Murray, you see some of these players, but it's really, it's been great to hear from you, from someone who's covered them and really focuses on specific players and really the team as a whole. So I definitely appreciate you coming. So now they can find, everyone can find you at heavy.com.
Yeah, so part of the heavy.com, you can look over heavy on Cardinals. And you can also go to our Heavy on Cardinals Facebook page. All the links to our stories end up there too, so that's a good place to find us. You can also find me on Twitter. It's Jared Zona. I think that's on the screen there for you there now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I really appreciate you having me on. I love talking about the Arizona Cardinals, and as I mentioned at the start, this is as it times go for talking about the Cardinals. This is a pretty darn good one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks again. And this has been NFL Outdated Cover 2 series.